How's it going, Raiders? My name is Ryan, and this is the Raiders Confessional podcast where we talk all things raiding in the world of Azeroth. On today's show, episode 31, we are going to be sitting down and chatting with the AskMrRobot crew. No further ado, tanks, everyone's ready. Pull timer on you.
The heroes have made it to the glorious finale.
All right, here we go, guys. Set up your chairs, focus up, let's do this.
Alright guys, get buffed up.
Okay, so we want to soak the annihilations,
Get your shit together.
then we want to target the annihilator,
Put the big girl panties on.
move back to avoid damage from eradication,
I think I've disconnected.
then we target the decimator,
Can we pull already?
then we target boss.
I hope you can swim in molten lava.
Let's kill this dragon.
Welcome back, Raiders. As I've already stated, my name is Ryan, and you are listening to the Raiders Confessional podcast, where we talk all things raiding and in-game PvE content in the world of Azeroth. Joining me today, as always, from the land of Denmark, is one Martin Larson. What is up, Marty?
Hello, that's me. I'm still here.
Thank God. I don't know what we would do without you. Also joining us today is a special guest, Zoopercat from AskMrRobot. Zoop, how are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, everybody.
Well, we want to welcome you back to the show. You've been on our show twice before, right? We did a two-part series.
Right?
Yeah. And then you've also been over on the Blizzard Umbrella podcast as well. So definitely want to welcome you
guys
back.
are always fun.
I know.
Great.
We strive for fun. We don't really care what our content is like as long as it's fun. So
It sounds like Zoopercat is missing one very important podcast to be on.
yeah, the Blue Recluse. So
Sign me up.
Cool.
get that down. Sweet,
Are you
sweet.
busy? Are you busy next week?
Just a little.
Listeners, if you guys would give us 5 minutes, we're going to briefly set up a podcast segment for another podcast on the show live today. So, but yes, definitely want to welcome
You wanna
Zoops
get
back.
my account?
But yeah. So we have a really good show on today, scheduled for today. I'm excited. It's always fun to have Zoop back. We've been a lot of stuff, controversy, other things kind of sitting around AskMrRobot, both good, bad, all of the above. It's always exciting to have them on, and we certainly love the work they do. So I definitely hope those of you joining us today, or joining us in your ears at a later date for the audio version, that you guys are as excited as we are to talk what they have in store for us going forward. Before we get into that, Marty, BFA's close, man. We just got off the tails of a Before the Storm spoiler episode
Mm-hmm.
on the Blizzard Umbercluse.
Yeah.
Where both the Blizzard Umbrella and the Blue Recluse, we talked Before the Storm and all the in-game cinematics. That was a lot of fun. I know some of the people in chat today were there for that as well. But other than that,
And
man.
some of my views were not popular apparently. I don't know what's
Well,
that all about.
as Twitch chat said yesterday, Marty, you're the worst, so you just have to deal with
Clearly the one.
it. But man, so we're getting close, man. Are you excited? Not excited? Where you at right
How
now?
can you not be excited after the week we just been through? I mean, it's been a roller coaster up and down, hasn't it?
It certainly has.
Yeah.
Now, Zoop, I know you guys have been buried in work, trying to get everything done. Have you had some time to get in game or be paying attention to the cinematics that are coming out? Any of that stuff?
Yeah, so no time in game unless I'm testing items and talents in rotation.
Right.
So I know what a target dummy looks like about now in BFA. Don't know anything else. And I haven't seen the cinematics. I want to, and I'm sure I could make some time to do that, but I've decided to wait. So the game launches at what, 3 p.m. in
Something like
the,
that.
US or at least Pacific, I think. On Monday, and so basically we're gonna update the site right before that, and during that like little down update
Mhm.
time, I'm gonna watch all of it, and then I'll finally know what everyone's been talking about.
Oh, I think that's good. We actually re-rolled Horde for this expansion, and I haven't done any of the Alliance stuff since they've started putting out these little quest hubs and cinematics. So I'm gonna wait until a couple of days before BFA launches and do all of the Alliance stuff in one go.
Nice.
But I think watching the cinematics, because right now there are definitely some big gaps and some big questions out there that I think some of it may get answered this next week with reset. So
Ooh, exciting.
yeah, I think because it's like I equate that to like Netflix series. You know, I would rather wait until the whole thing is out, watch
Yes.
it all in one shot, than have to wait each and every single week to see what happens next.
Yes.
But
I'm right there with you.
yeah, so Marty, have you been playing much in beta or live, or just been kind of enjoying some time off?
I'm actually starting to, because I last week or last show I'm pretty sure I said that I was not, I didn't feel ready for BFA yet, but after this week I'm like, I've been playing World of Warcraft. I've been going at it. I found out as well that there's not daily quests, but world quests in Darkshore now. So for all those alts, that's not that well geared. It's a good place to be right now. So I've been doing that. Been gearing some of the alts. So I'm ready.
Yeah, man. If you haven't gotten relics, so if your weapon's fairly low item level, the weapons that come from the world quest, not only are they a decent item level, but they can Titan Forge. One of our guys got a 245 Titan Forged weapon out of the world quest. So, and my mom,
I was so happy. I was so happy. I got a 215, and now you just destroyed it for me. 245.
yeah, sorry about that, bud. Yeah, I was actually kind of like, my monk is just slightly over that 245 threshold on the weapon thing. I'm like, well, this is pointless for me now, because I doubt I'm ever going to see a 280 Titan Forge. But I know some of you are probably confused if you haven't been in game lately. Yes, there was a stat squish, so item levels and stats are changed. You're probably
level 50.
yeah, like, what 280? Are you raiding Wailing Caverns? What is going on? But yeah, there's been a stat squish. So, for those of you who are joining us who may not be familiar with AskMrRobot, AskMrRobot, as far as I know, and when they first came to my desktop, so to speak, was during Mists of Pandaria, correct? With their reforging stuff. They had a fantastic tool that would take care of all of the hours you would spend in front of the reforger trying to figure out what the best reforges were to max min your stats. And they had a little program that took care of all of that for you, and your trip to the reforger was all of maybe a few minutes. So it was fantastic. I loved it. And then they kind of, I don't want to say stalled or whatever. You just kind of took a break, you know. And you guys came back with a vengeance in Legion, with your simulator, your gear stuff, with best in bags, all that stuff. And I have been loving every bit of it. Truth be told, I've actually had some of my guildies go in and download your in-game add-on and just say, just give me your string, give me the import string, and I will tell you what piece of gear to put on. Because we had some people over the various guilds I've been in Legion that were struggling with gear decisions, and so we we did that, and I sat down with them and explained why these were best, whatever. And then I kind of talked about how we talked about on the earlier shows, how maybe there isn't always one right answer.
Right.
And while this says one thing, if you wanted to go a different stat ratio in another direction, you could, but it may be harder due to gear availability out there, whatever. But if you're just looking for an answer, here is one. And so I've loved every bit of what they've had going on. And so I definitely want to tip my hat to you guys. You guys have been fantastic in Legion, and I cannot wait to see what you guys have moving forward. I know you guys have some stuff in the works, and I'm even in the dark. She hasn't told me anything that they've been working on. Yeah. Same with the Raider.io crew. They're going to be on next week, and they've been tight-lipped on. Yeah, they've got stuff as well. The little bit I could get out of them was they have some tools coming to aid with guild recruitment. So,
that'll be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Because those of you who have been in charge of running a guild in some aspect in Legion knows how big of a pain that guild recruitment is. Yeah, sigh indeed. So, excuse me. But one of the things that is going to be coming with BFA is the inevitable grind or race to 120, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody has their plans from here. I'm taking the week off from work, or I'm just going to cram in what free time I can.
Nice.
I unfortunately started a new job, so I cannot take any time off, but that's okay. I've told everybody in my life, when I'm home from work, you do not bother me for 2 weeks. I'm busy. Between podcasts and leveling, I have to get to 120 and geared out. you know. So those of you that are in the TRC guild, don't worry. I will be 120 and geared and helping all of you get your gear in dungeons as I tank for you. But the biggest question to be had is once you hit 120, what comes next, right? And
Then
for
you
those,
game
right?
over, right?
Yeah,
Game over. You go take a break for 2 years.
BFA's been great. I'll see you guys in 2 years.
Right. That's what the game is.
But with hitting 120, depending on how you play the game, whether you're a casual player, a hardcore player, whatever, for a lot of us, it's what do I got to do to get ready for raids, or what do I got to do once I'm in raids? And I think a lot of what comes with that is gear selection, stats, learning new rotations, all of that stuff. And I think that's where AskMrRobot comes into play. And like I said, I don't know anything of what they have in store, and they could have some just crazy off the wall stuff. I don't know. But from here, I'm going to let Zoops take it away and kind of let us know what they have coming.
Will it play the game for me and gear it up?
It's just a huge macro.
We just have to figure out how to not get you banned. Yeah, so we do a lot of gear ranking, and that's really been a problem that we've worked to solve and just kind of nailed it about halfway through Legion. So, all of you are probably familiar with stat weights, right? And stat weights have kind of always had limitations where they don't tell you how crit and mastery interact and these kinds of things. And what if your class needs a balance of several stats? Stat weights don't answer that problem. And of course, stat weights don't rank anything with a proc, trinkets and now, the Azeroth powers. So we started, playing with simulation data and finally landed on what we call our adaptive gearing strategies. And basically what that is we take all of the talent and gear setups you could get for your character ever in, well, Aldir, we're going to limit it to the rating tiers. We take all of that, simulate it for you ahead of time. So we're going to be simulating that about a week before Aldir launches. And then we bundle that data, apply some fancy machine learning, wave our hands a little, and then we have basically a giant data set so that when you load your character, we know what the best gear is. And then let's say you're like, well, I'm going to change a talent. Don't worry, we have that data too. And so then we can automatically rank all of your data with the push of one button, and you never have to simulate because we already simulated for you. And so that's kind of what made it super convenient in Legion, and we're continuing that with Battle for Azeroth, and trying to make sure we've got all the Azeroth powers get ranked right, and all that jazz. There's always something Blizzard has to throw in to make things hard. How dare they? So I don't know if you've played with that part at all, but that's kind of the main thing that we offer, which is tied to it does it for all the gear lists, like if you're just playing with the ranked lists on like just the Gear Explorer, which is free, or if you're using Best in Bags, which is part of Premium, that's the real kind of advantage you get with this adaptive gearing strategy stuff.
Yeah, I gotta say, I love that aspect in Legion. That was one of my. I just really started getting frustrated when I was playing my mage, and I switched from fire. It was easy. It was like, if it doesn't have crit on it, you don't want it. And it didn't matter if the piece was 40 item levels higher. If it didn't have crit on it, you didn't want it. Everything was crit early on. And then I switched to Frost. And Frost, for anybody that played Frost in Legion, it was quite the stat whore, so to speak. It just was a really big pain sometimes finding the balance, because they had three minimum stats that had big impacts with the class, and so it was this constant balancing. I multiple times I'd get a new piece of gear. I was using pawn and that kind of stuff at the time, and all of a sudden I'd hover over a piece. I'm like, this is an upgrade by 2%. I'm like, okay, cool. So I get it. I got to put it on, run the sims, update my pawn string, and I'd hover over the piece I just took off. This is a 2% upgrade. What? Like, oh my gosh. And I go back and forth, and right. Truth be told, I was just kind of at this hill of stats, and each piece would put me just slightly over to one side, and I couldn't find that middle ground. But it was like that all the time, and that's kind of when I started doing some digging, found you guys were back in the fold, and I reached out to you at that point when we were doing the podcast. I was looking for some guests anyways, and I have I don't think I've touched a single simulator since then. I've just used everything from you guys. It's a one-stop shop. I love it. I don't have to use
Nice.
multiple add-ons. It tells me all the answers I need to know. And I'm a Mythic Raider. You know, I didn't kill Agrimar or Argus, but I've seen both the fights through on multiple hundreds of pulls through all phases. And so I've played the game all the way through on in-game content, and you know, because some people would always argue, well, their AskMrRobot isn't for the in-game. Well, it absolutely is for the game. I know plenty of Mythic Raiders that use it and rate at the top and do just fine.
Right, and yeah, and that's actually kind of funny because it's basically like, all right, if you're a Mythic Raider, you're saying you don't want massive machine learning.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and so what you're kind of describing too is, so best in bags, for those of you who don't know, we take all of the gear from your bags and then we find the best set for you right now, with the click of one button. And it handles those things, like you were saying, that like you go from one side to the other side. That's what, you know, this knows ahead of time and handles. And then the next step for a lot of people is, all right, well, now I know what I have, is you're trying to figure out what should I upgrade to, right? What are my gear upgrades? And so you have the upgrade finder, and that's getting some minor facelifts for Battle for Azeroth. So the upgrade finder answers questions like, what can I get in my Mythic Plus cache this week? What can I get from the raid this week? And so one of the things we're doing now is, we used to just list all of the gear for you that was an upgrade in the raid, and we would rank it. But now we're letting you say which bosses you're doing. You know, of course, which difficulty, which is always done. But if you're like, well, I'm doing, you know, all of heroic and then the first 3 mythic bosses, you just check those things, and then we're like, okay, well, we're not going to recommend Argus gear for you. We're gonna look at what you're actually currently doing. And then I think probably people's favorite upgrade finder feature is, how do I spend my bonus rolls? And so we do a bunch of calculations, yeah, and we tell you 2 things, because the decision really lies in your hands. We tell you which boss has the most upgrades for you, right? Because a boss might drop 5 pieces, and if you already have 4 of them, only one's an upgrade, right? But you still have a chance to get one of those that isn't an upgrade. So that's an important piece of information. And the other thing we tell you is the bosses with the biggest upgrade, because you might say, well, I don't care that I only have a 20% chance because out of 5 items, only one's an upgrade. That upgrade is huge,
Right.
which might happen with weapons, because, you know, now weapons are back, and that was always like a big thing in the past, and I'm assuming it's going to be a big thing again. And so we tell you those 2 pieces of information. We also kind of combine them to like an overall stat score, but then that way you have the choice. You're like, you know, we give you the information, you make the choice, and then, you know, how you spend your bonus rolls. So that'll be kind of fun. For people
Now,
who
is
played it
this
for
a
the raid.
tool that I have missed that you guys have had in Legion, or is this slightly newer with the upgrades or
we've-
the bonus roll stuff?
Yeah, so we've always had it, but it hasn't been, and that's why it's getting a facelift. It's called the upgrade finder, but then there's like a little drop down, and you have to know to look for it. Well, that's not fun. You know,
Right.
if you had something in your face that said, "How do you spend your bonus rolls?" You'd be like, "Well, hell yeah, I want to know that." And so we're adjusting that so that it's more obvious to people that we answer these questions.
Right. And I gotta say, one of the things that I've always really liked about you guys, compared to other people who do similar work, is right there. You just touched on it, and a lot of times if I go use SimC or I go use Pawn or any of the other tools out there, um, I gotta watch a YouTube video, someone else explaining me how to use it, because some of them are so intricate and so complex, which you kind of need them to be if you want to really get down to the nitty gritty. But it's not intuitive at face value, and so it's like, well, how do I use this? What do I do? You know, I can sit here and click through all the different options all day long, and some of it still may not be clear. And every
Right.
time I talk to you guys are constantly talking about, well, we noticed, or we've been getting some feedback that, you know, such and such of our tools are not just intuitive at the start. And so we're going to give it a new facelift, because, you know, we want to take care of all of the headache, all of the learning or whatever that may come along with this type of stuff. Just do all of that for you, so you can just come in, use your tool, get your answers, and go back to playing the game. And I absolutely love that. And I don't love it because I'm lazy. I love it because there's other things I would be rather spending my time doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've just always loved that fact. And the fact that you guys are giving me stuff that is more accurate, in my opinion, or more in line of how things should be. You know, it's not
Yeah.
just somebody decided this how it should be and then we're going to go with it. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting you touch on that. Like, we have 2 kind of philosophies, and one of those is, we want to save you time. Like, this should be easy. You shouldn't feel like you're doing homework outside of the game. Like, you should get yourself outside of the game so that you can have fun playing the game. And then the other is, with our design philosophy, if somebody's having a hard time figuring something out, our first question is why? Like, what did we not solve that is making it hard for this person? Like, we never assume the person's dumb. It's like, if you can't find that filter button, which most people couldn't find because it's a tiny little cog on a whole big tool, we did something wrong. And that's something that we should fix and adjust if we think it's an important feature. Now, if it's a hardcore feature and it's kind of a little bit hidden, that's fine, because then that makes it, easier for everybody else. But there's a lot of features like, the filters that were too hidden. And so we're bringing those back out for BFA and putting them front and center because we think it's important for you to be able to filter your gear. Like, the filters control things like what difficulty you want to look at, and do you want to set an item level min or max, or things like that. So yeah, so it's awesome that you like that. Notice we try. Our designer Swole is kind of killer at that. I can't take any credit. It would look like a little WordPress site if it was just me.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with WordPress sites.
Don't do that.
That's what the blog's on, so I can actually handle it.
Marty's a web designer over there, so he's like,
yeah.
that WordPress.
It's my favorite system to work in.
I believe it.
Yeah, Marty, recently we transitioned some of the Blue the Blizzard Umbrella stuff over to one of Marty's servers, and I gave him this whole chunk of WordPress stuff, and he just was like, oh. Sorry, Marty. Sorry, not sorry.
No, it's fine.
Hashtag.
Fine. Yeah, whatever. No.
And oh, go ahead.
No, I was just like, that really, I haven't touched AskMrRobot since Reforging was a thing, I have to admit, but just, I know Ryan has been talking about it, and now actually hearing more about it, I hate SimCraft, so I'll definitely go check this one out, because I never understood how it worked completely, and I tried watching YouTube videos and stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but how am I going to do this myself now? So I'm definitely going to check this out and see how it works. So it sounds really, really nifty.
Cool.
It's a one-stop shop, man. And I'm not sitting here because the AMR crew is, giving me free things or paying me in any capacity. Like, they're not having to convince me to convince you. Like, I found all of this on my own and then reached out to them. So I absolutely love it, because what is at the base value? Why do you play this game? You play this game to play the
make
game,
the math,
right? Everything else
all day.
That's right. That's why I play.
Yeah, well, we can't all be AMR, but like, we play the game to play the game, and anything else is secondary. And I do love a lot of the secondary stuff with it, the add-ons, the mods, the weak auras, you name it, because it adds another fun, intricate layer to the game, and it allows you to play the game at a different level. But still, at the end of the day, I don't want to spend the entirety of my time messing with a lot of stuff. I want to get it set up, have it be, let it sit there for another 6 months until they change some weird thing and I have to go mess with it again. I don't want to play the game. I want to spend time with my buddies, raiding, doing whatever, and play the game, and not have to mess with all this stuff. That's not how I personally enjoy spending my time. I would rather play the game, and you guys allow that. So
Yeah, and one of our big things, and I kind of touched on it, but it's probably worth mentioning again. So all of the kind of gear optimization that we offer, we refer to it as like the gear optimizer, which is separate from the simulator. The idea is we've done all of the simulation work so you don't have to. So that if you're just like, I just want the answer, good, you click a button, we've got it covered, because we've networked, thousands of computers together across a whole bunch of users to get the simulation data done.
right.
It's kind of, we call it the GlowNet. It's kind of like SETI at home, if you're familiar with that. But instead of looking for aliens, we're just doing Warcraft.
Way more important work.
Clearly,
real quick, I'll interject. For those of you, Zoop is throwing some terminology out there, and I know I've kind of made a mental note. There's some things we've talked about that some of you listening or watching today may not be familiar with. I will link to other episodes in the show notes where we first had them on, explaining a lot of this stuff, so that we can kind of spend some more time talking about the stuff they have coming out. And if you want to kind of catch up and learn some of what we're talking about, you can go back and listen to those 2 previous episodes. So
cool. Yeah. But yeah, so while we know that most people don't want to, constantly be simming their gear, we do have a simulator for the people who want to play with it, and you had mentioned that too. And so, I know you played with that a little bit, right? I don't know if you've played with the beta one yet,
Nope, I have
which
not
is a
used the
little
beta
different.
one.
Okay. So the beta one just basically got a facelift again, same thing. Like, we had a bunch of really cool features lumped under the term batch simulation.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna come to a simulator, you're gonna see batch simulation. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, batch cookies? I don't know. Like, what are you? What is this?
What's the lot
And
size?
right, yeah. So we basically, there's cool things under there. Like you could sim any number of talent and gear combinations. You could compare different rotations to each other, and it was all
Mm-hmm.
automatic. But you had to go to this feature that nobody knew what it was, and so we're kind of breaking it into little chunks now. And so yeah, so the new simulator has a new layout. It's kind of like it walks you through step by step instead of throwing a ton of um, features and filters at you at once. So it's like, oh, pick the boss script, pick your rotation. Don't forget to tell us if you want us to automatically gem and enchant any gear that you pick. Oh, also don't forget to tell, it's like the list goes on. So now we kind of have that, have it changed and a little bit nicer for people. But yeah, just so people don't know, I should probably explain this. So the gear optimization part of the website, when you're playing with like ranked gear lists and stuff, that's free. If you're playing with best in bags and the upgrade finder, which we talked about, that's part of premium, which is $12 a year, or $2 a month if you're paying monthly. We want to keep the price super low.
Worth it.
Right? It's we really try to keep that as low as possible. And then the simulator is completely free. It's always free. There's no queues, no limitations. And the reason we're able to do that is, so how like you're familiar with SimCraft, and some of your viewers are probably familiar with it as well. So you know how that's a program that runs on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a client program that runs on your computer as well, but you never use it. Like you just open it up and it sits in the background. You never touch it. Once you log in, that's it. And then you go back to the website and you still do all of your things on the simulator. Like, you set up your simulation of your reports. But what that lets us do is harness your computer's power. So if you want to run, 10 million, iterations of, 5,000 combinations of gear, you can do that. And if you have several computers at home, you can network them so that it gets done faster. So anyway, so that's how we're able to keep the simulator free. And one of the things we really focus on, why did we build a simulator, is we wanted to, address some of the things that we thought, could be improved on. Basically, we came into the simulation game late enough that building it from scratch allowed us to learn from the past. So can you imagine if like Blizzard took World of Warcraft and just rebuilt it from scratch? A lot of more things would be possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? You'd probably be able to have a lot more things integrated with the mobile app and stuff. And so that's kind of why we took that approach. And one of our main goals with it was to make it more accessible to everybody. People who don't know how to code, we wanted them to be able to still kind of dig into the simulator a little bit. And so we put everything on a wiki. So if you have a spell, you have a fireball, you're a mage, you're casting fireball, we have a wiki that tells you how that spell works. It says, it does 200 damage. It has it's on the global cooldown. It's affected by crit and mastery and whatever, right? So we have all that stuff. You can look at it. If you wanted, you could edit it, but, I guess people do it around like expansions, just, play with balancing stuff. But so you can look at all that stuff. You can look at the rotations. That's all on the wiki as well. And then what happens when you click simulate is we take all of the wiki information, we turn it into code, and that runs the simulator. So if you edit something on the wiki, it automatically gets updated and runs in the simulator. And so that's actually been a really big success. A lot of people really like that wiki because it's data that you can't get unless you dig into the game client, and most people don't want to do that. And so we're trying to, make it available to people. And then the other thing we're really focusing on is like modeling error. So sampling error, a lot of people are familiar with, and that's where you hear people say things like, oh, you have to run 10,000 iterations or a 0.05% margin of error. So a lot of people who do simulation are already familiar with that. So that's basically saying here's a data set, and we're going to try to get you really close so that we know that this is the actual true average value. That's easy to do. Modeling error is basically saying, well, can we get closer to modeling the game? And so that includes things like actual boss scripts from the current tier. And we've done about 3 bosses per tier, and that's been super popular, and we've been able to compare it to logs of top players and prove that it actually matches what they're doing. And then same with rotations. So, is this a rotation that top players are able to do, or is it something that only a computer can truly do? And so we've really focused on modeling the actual, like what people are actually doing in game better. But that being said, you still can't be perfect. Like, what if your raid group does the boss a little bit differently? What was it? Goroth or Gorothi? I get those two confused. The guys
World
with the
Breaker?
pillars, and you had to get behind the pillar. Is that the World Breaker?
No, there were no.
It was like second tier, I think.
Oh, in Taurus?
Yeah.
Um,
It was before in Taurus.
not in Taurus. Tomb of Sargeras.
Yes.
Yep. What was his name? Do you remember Marty? Big guy.
He was the
Very first boss.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the big guy.
Yeah, that guy. So now that everybody knows that we've described who he is, we don't know his name. So what I found with that is, first we set up the boss script such that melee had to run away and hide behind the pillar, and so they would lose DPS time. But then we started seeing a bunch of teams. The tank would pull the boss near the pillar, and so then melee was still able to DPS. So we ended up having 2 versions of the script, right? So people could play with one or the other. And so it's those kinds of things that we try to keep an eye out for, so that we're as close to the game as possible, because it's really nice. The one thing we've really seen people appreciate with that is, they'll tell us all the time, wow, your simulator, I'm actually close to the damage you're suggesting. It's not, 30% too high, because it's this unrealistic patchwork fight with a rotation that I can't, only a computer can do, or only I can do if I have, some add-on that's basically playing the game for me. So we're trying to put more energy into that for Battle for Azeroth, and a lot more explaining and the rotations, and making it easier for you to understand rotations. If any of you ever looked at a rotation on either our site or in Simulation Craft?
I try not to.
It's not easy to
Yeah, I
read.
figured.
And so I was hoping for a screenshot, but we don't have it stylized yet. So I was going to share with you guys. I'll have to follow up and share it with you. But we're basically taking the rotations and making them human readable. So we're doing that by having just a lot of comments, and then we're doing things like, one of the complications in rotation is, it's like, well, if you have this item, also do this. If you have this talent, also do that, and all these things. And if you're looking at it, you're like, well, I don't have that talent, I don't have that trinket. We're stripping all of that out, so it's in the back end. But when you go to view it for your character, we show you the customized view of what the rotation's doing for your character. So we're hoping that helps people. We'll see. No one's seen it yet, except the 3 of us as Mr. Robot. So we're all little.
And I gotta say, I'm glad you're doing that, because I kind of suspected if I were to dig into that point, it'd be a little hard to read, because I am familiar with how complex some of that stuff can be.
Right.
But I also know from talking to you in previous times that some of the rotations you guys use can differ from the rotations suggested slightly on, let's say, Icy Veins or other guide sources. And there's even differences amongst those. So for anybody who might be saying, well, no, there's differences all across the board.
There's more than one way to play.
But that was kind of the thing I always wondered, is okay, your sim says I should be doing, my shaman when I ended was, in the 75, 76 item level rate. What was it? 975, I think was where we were at, right? Yeah. It was 975, 976. I should be doing, anywhere from 1.8 to 3.2 million DPS, depending on the fight. And I was kind of wondering, well, am I doing the rotation that this simulator is using? And I would always get marginally close that it would make sense, but I was like, I'm within a 5% margin of what I'm suggested to be at, which, give or take, depending on the fight, like you said, the strat, what other, what other classes are in the raid comp at the time. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm performing just fine. I'm parsing, high blue, purple, sometimes orange and above. I'm good. But that was one of the things I always wondered is like, how am I doing the rotation the simulator is using? So I think that's going to be a good way for
Right.
people to verify, what they're doing and whether it's in conjunction with what simulator is saying they should be doing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in my head because that's one of the things. Like one of the things that um, happens is, people take simulation as gospel, right? I simulated trinket A and trinket B. Here's the final result. This one is 100% better. Well, I shouldn't say 100. It's 1% better, and I'm confident in that, right? Is what people say. And I always ask, but are you using the same rotation? Like, do you know what the rotation is? Do you know, the assumptions on the boss scripts? And so we're trying to bring that out. So for two reasons. One, you can look at it and you can say, well, that's not quite the rotation I'm doing. Maybe I can adjust it or ask somebody to provide something else if there's another popular rotation. Um, or you might say, oh, I didn't think of doing that in my rotation. Huh. That does get me more damage. Okay, I'll go and try that. And that's something you can get, like you said, if you're able to read these rotations, you can learn a lot from it. And so that's something we really want to try to help people with. And the while the guides are good, like you see guides and they say here's your rotation. Um, insider secret, those often aren't actually exactly what the simulators are doing. They're usually a little bit simplified, or they don't tell you all the little ifs, ands, or buts. And so, we're trying to make a system such that if you simulate it and this is what it says, and you can see the rotation, they match because they came from the same source. And if you want a different rotation, we can do that. You can edit it, you can simulate it, and that they always match. So yeah, I think that'll be fun, for us hardcore people.
Well, and I always love when you bring that up because one of the classes that always would to me was easiest to explain that was Shadow Priest. At its core, you wanted to get as many was it Void Torrent. You wanted to get as many of those off as possible. But sometimes, depending on the phase transitions or whatever, that was not always possible, and so you had to make an in the moment decision. And there were little nuances that you would say, and I remember because I was playing Shadow Priest at the time, and I'd go into the Shadow Priest, how to priest, and I'd talk to the Shadow Priest like, oh yeah, it's you got to do this here. Like, well, your guide doesn't say that, and it was. But yeah, there's always going to be little nuances, and they're going to be very indicative of the fight, the moment you're in, the raid comp,
Right.
all sorts of variables.
Right.
But
yeah, so that should be really fun. We're really excited for that. And then the other thing that we're excited for with the simulator is the tanking and healing. So we launched that in Legion and kind of used all of Legion to, tweak it. And so tanks, we got pretty solid right away because we've been working on that for a while. And then healers, I think it was with Antorus, we finally got that locked down. And then we have a few more extra things we're adding for Battle for Azeroth. And I wish I had them ready. I have some blog posts we're going to launch right after BFA that explains healing and tanking sims, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure a lot of viewers are like, wait, you can simulate tanks and healers? And the answer is yes, but I've done a really poor job at, explaining it to people. I haven't put content up that explains the back end. So they look at it and they say, okay, you say you can sim tanks and healers, but you haven't told me how.
right.
So yeah, so I don't know if you want to get into that. We can too, but I don't know if that's out of scope of the show. But it's
No, we can
cool.
talk about it. It's fair game.
Okay. Healers is probably the one that most people think you can't sim yet, and so the basics are, so what do you need? What do you need to sim as a healer, right? I mean, do either of you guys play a healer? Yes. Okay, so what do you tell me, and I'll see if I've got it all covered. What would you need to simulate a healer?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Can you sim a healer?
Right. So in order to sim a healer, you need a raid, like a boss script that's going to damage the raid. So you have to simulate the whole raid, right? Because you have to simulate people taking damage.
And it depends on the setup as well, right? What other healers are you running?
Right. Yes. So right, you need to know other healers because you have to know that they're healing people too. The other healers have to have logic because they're going to heal like a real player heals in order to make it work. You need Phases, right? You might be like, well, I'm going to use my big AoE cooldown here. So how do you know when to use that? Um, what else? I probably should have like looked up notes on my blog post because someone's gonna be like, but you didn't cover this. So basically, we do all of that, and that's why healers took a little bit more work. So we have real damage going out, and we can script whether there's dots going randomly on people, big AOE damage, spike damage on the tanks. So we simulate all of that. Um, then we have the other healers in the raid, and this is something that we're adding for BFA. So we already have different healers, but we kind of locked them in. We had 4 different types of healers, right? It's like somebody who modeled a druid, which has a lot of hots, somebody who modeled, a spec with big heals and things like that. And so for BFA, we're actually going to let you pick which types of healers you have, so that you might be like, well, I have all holy paladins, so let's let's see what that looks like. So they're healing, and then we have to have, their item level kind of matches yours. And I think we simulate them to be just slightly less aggressive than you, the main healer. Because you have to factor in overheals, right? And so if they're too aggressive, then your overheals look too high. So we assume you're the star healer on the team, basically, and you're like maybe 10%
Obviously.
better. I mean, obviously. And let's see, what else do we account for? Oh, we also do timing of the AoE heals. So we know that each of the other types of healers have AoE heals. And so we program that you, star healer, get to use yours first. And then everybody else goes after that. And so, yeah, so we basically try to cover everything.
I guess it probably also depends a little bit what kind of classes do you bring, because some classes have like more self-healing or damage reductions
Right.
and stuff like that.
Right.
Is that in there as well? Or
So that's in there for tanks. We
Mm,
actually do not have that for the other, like the DPS classers. We do
mm.
not have that. So yeah, that's good. There you go. Maybe we'll add that in. um, yeah, and so we do that to factor in, overhealing. Then it figures out mana usage. And so the really nice thing with the healing simulators is you can use it kind of for your own theory craft. You can say, well, if I'm running out of mana, is this trinket better? Or you can say, well, if I'm running out of mana, is it better to use these less mana efficient heals, or burn through it and wait? That's probably really bad advice. Nobody probably would ever say to do that. I'm bad. I haven't played a healer in a while. Yeah, and so you're just able to kind of look at these different things and say, what gear is better? What happens, at this part of the fight when it's really, really, really hard? What are the best spells for me to use? So you can kind of change your rotation and rotation. Um, it's really kind of priority rules, like you would use them in your head, right? So it would be like, oh, well, if the tank drops below 50% health, he gets all my heals until he's higher. If, there's more than 5 people injured, I'm gonna use an AoE heal. So things like that. So it's kind of fun to be able to play with those and test them out. So yeah, and I'll have a blog post so that everyone can see it. And it's a 4-part series because there's a lot to cover. And then people can
But
find out.
I sort of also feeling that healing is one of the more fun aspect of the game, because there's no fight that's similar, even though you've done the same fight over and over. It's always sort of different because it's different people who take damage, and
Yeah.
there's so many variables.
Yeah.
What's the composition of the raid composition this week and things like that. So
And it
that's
always feels chaotic and exciting.
yes.
Playing healer again in BFA, because that's what I used to play, and then I didn't in Legion, so I'm going back to it. And that's the other thing. I know the main thing a lot of people say, well, if somebody stands on fire, you can't simulate that. But we can. So you can either say there's a % chance somebody's going to stand on fire way too long. You can say they're always going to stand on fire. And so what I try to, how I explain it is, basically you as a human in game cannot predict if somebody's going to stand on fire. So a simulator can't predict that either. All you can do is plan ahead. So if somebody starts standing on fire in the middle of the game, you can't like switch all your gear and give yourself a high crit build so you have a high chance of healing that person to full. You have to make that decision ahead of time. And so what we suggest is use a simulator to say, you know what, I know I have a lot of fire standers, so we're going to put a high chance that somebody's going to stand in fire so that you can get gear for that.
I was about to say, don't you as a healer, you sort of know that we have these few guys, they always stand in fire.
Yes. And so you can customize the simulator to be like, yep, no, we're always going to have 3 people standing in fire. Let's just make that happen. Or you can say, like you could have some people in your team gear for no one standing in fire, and then you can have some people kind of be those clutch emergency healers and gear for a bunch of people standing in fire, and then that way the raid team is balanced. So it's kind of fun to be able to play with that. And yeah, no, the simulator can't predict if you're going to stand in fire, but neither can you. I mean, sort of. If you can predict it, the simulator can predict it.
I'm predicting Cake in Twitch chat is always going to stand in fire.
Oh,
He's
boy.
one of our guild members. So.
Yeah, so that's the rundown on that.
Well, I'm excited to get into your tank stuff because I'm going to be tanking this expansion, and I haven't tanked or healed in a very long time. So best of luck to my guildmates. I hope I remember the time.
Yes.
But
yes.
yeah, no,
and
it's
we've got for the tank simulations we model like tank swaps and death chance. So the nice thing about this is we let you die. So back in the day, and I think probably still to this day.
Wait, you're letting me die? You're the worst healer ever.
I know, right? It used to be you only simulated DPS on tanks. But so now we basically made a model such that you have a real health pool, you can actually die, and we have real healers, in the simulator, healing you. And basically we put them at the same item level as you, and if they can't keep you alive, and your own defensive stuff can't keep you alive, then you're either under geared or you have to do a different rotation or switch out items or something. And so then what we do is show you your death chance on the report, and so you can look at it and say, oh, 10% death chance. Well, that's not too bad. 70% death chance. Okay, all right. Hey guys, we're gonna die a lot. I'm pretty sure. Like when you go into the raid, right? The first time you go into Aldir, you're probably gonna be a little under geared. A lot of people are. So it's kind of interesting to be able to do that, and yeah, so we do. We have a new metric that, shame on us, we haven't written up yet, called TUF, TUF, and it stands for how tough you are, because Mr. Robot is working on his puns. What else are you gonna call it? I mean, we could have called it like after me, like the Zoop Index, but that's just not interesting, and nobody knows what that would mean. But tough, TUF, I mean, clearly, you know what that's gonna mean. But it's basically, it looks at your own damage mitigation, the healing that's required on you, and your death chance, and it's kind of meant to track all of that. And so that'll be, and we show you a whole bunch of metrics so that you can be like, look, I think I don't want to use your tough score, I want to look at just my chance to die. Or you can say, well, chance to die doesn't tell the whole story because I'm mitigating a lot with this set of gear, and I want to know that. So hopefully we can help you and your team not die too much.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Hear that, Cake?
Complex stuff.
Hear that, Cake? You need to use this stuff. I don't want you to die.
Is Cake your a tank who's gonna stand in fire?
Nope, he's just a mage that likes to stand in fire.
Well, we could probably help him gear for that. We could give him a boss script where he's taking so much damage, it tells him all the defensive Azeroth powers he should get. Makes it probably would go after high item levels because he's gonna want stamina. We'll help him.
Oh, I love that we're picking on Cake. But
So I'm just thinking that you said that you have pre-simulated all this stuff, but I'm just thinking, all right, there's like how many 13 classes, everyone have 3 specs, some more than others. Then there's Azeroth gear where you can switch stuff up. There's talents, there is enchants, there's gems. I mean, that's a lot of simulations, isn't it?
It is. And so it's something that we thought of and we were like, can we even do this? And so the answer was yes, if we had enough computing power. And that computing power can be add up and get really expensive. So what we did is we built this client program so that anybody can download it and put it on their computer and let us use your computing power when you're not using it. And so we basically kind of network all of that together and run it. Now it still takes, I think, and then what we do is um, for everybody who signs up or is on it, we basically match. I think we overmatch. I think we right now paid for 2x basically every core you give us, we get 2x on the cloud. And that way we just have massive amounts of computing power. And right now, I think to do all the classes, all the specs, with every talent and gear count, or talent and like Azeroth and all those combos, I think it still takes a week and a half to 2 weeks to chug through all that with all that computing power. So it's not, and that's why we have, I don't know if some of you watching, you've seen us say during this pre-patch and then right at BFA launch, we will not have these adaptive gearing strategies. And that's because it takes so long to run. It's like, well, by the time we ran these for the pre-patch, BFA would be out. And so we're waiting to do that just before Aldir so that we get as many of the changes as possible so that we're not, spending all of the extra time.
Oh yeah, God! If they make changes as well, Jesus.
Well, so we got smart about that. Halfway through Legion, we updated the program such that if whatever they change, we look at the data and we only have to rerun the data that is affected. Now, if they change, a major spell that's basically required in all these rotations, okay, yeah, we're gonna have to rerun everything for that class. But if they're like, oh, we just balanced a couple trinkets here in this talent, then we only have to run those talent combos and stuff again. And we do some smarts up front, like we look at, so combinatorial, isn't that word right? Math is kind of crazy. And so what we try to do is find ways to remove combinations. So some talents don't really affect your damage. They're defensive if you're looking at DPSers. Or we can look at things like, well, these two talents don't interact. They don't multiply each other. And so we can kind of look at these things and get it a little bit more under control. But there's not a whole lot you can remove. And still, it's a little bit. So it helps. But yeah, it still takes a while. And we'll have a new blog post up for anyone who wants to join the GlowNet, is what we call it. To help contribute computing power, because that powers even things like the gem and enchant and the rank lists and all the free parts of the site too. And so that's really helpful because then we're able to keep kind of that super powerful engine available to everybody, so that it's not like a pay to win situation, which wouldn't, that's kind of sad. Nobody wants to have to pay to be better. So yeah, so you're not wrong to wonder about that. It's massive.
Yeah, this was some of the stuff that we talked about in the first 2 episodes that she was on, and also Swole and Yellow were on as well.
Well, that's right, because they know more about this than me.
Yeah. But like I said earlier, we'll go ahead and link those 2 episodes in the show notes. We don't have a video version per se. It is uploaded to YouTube, but it's just a stationary image the whole time. We hadn't quite switched to Twitch at the time, but I will. Like I said, I'll link them. So if you guys want, you can go back and listen to them. Kind of one of the questions I had as we kind of wind down our show here. It seems like a lot of what we've talked about is either improvements upon what has already existed, or something we've talked about before. Do you have anything new that is entirely new coming?
Yes.
That you can talk about? I guess I should preface with.
Some of it might not be ready until closer to Aldir launch.
Okay.
But so some of the things we're focusing on, and I have one that I know I can talk about. I kind of mentioned earlier, but we're really trying to focus on kind of analyzing complexity that we've all given the game, and seeing what's really necessary. And so if you take rotations, that's a big one, right? Rotations have gone down this rabbit hole of being super complex. And so throughout Legion, we started analyzing this and say, well, how much damage do you get from these different complexities? And we did some really interesting articles that said, we broke the rotation down. We went all the way down to the super basic. And then we said, all right, let's add things in one at a time, and let's see how much damage each of these things have. And that's really helpful, because then if you're not good at your rotation, or you're just learning, you're like, oh good, I can forget about all this stuff, just break it down to this basic stuff, and I know I'm only losing 3% DPS. So I think having that, like quantifying that, is really helpful for people, and people really enjoy those articles. And so we're trying to kind of automate that. And so sometimes the complexities really help, and sometimes they don't, and that's kind of our focus on some of these the new things we're going to come out with. And so the first one we're doing is the rotation, so kind of that human readable rotations. and I think we're going to be able to launch with BFA with 2 versions. So we've got a super base one that's stripped down. Like this is about as basic as you can get. And then we'll have another one that's a little more advanced. And so you'll be able to see these differences, not only in DPS, but in the like what we've added in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to kind of automate this to give it to people and help them understand so that they can make the choice. And we're doing it with some gear stuff too. We started doing in Legion. So you have best in bags, which tells you your best set of gear. But like we talked about with the modeling error, right? What if you're using a different strategy? What if you're using a slightly different rotation? You can't say that this item is always going to be 0.5% better because it depends. I mean, if you're using a different boss strategy,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not. And so what we just started doing is kind of showing you options that are all good sets of gear. And so that way, if you're like, okay, Mr. Robot, I know you say this one's best, but I really like using, well, like not legendaries anymore. I really like this Azeroth power. I really want to use it. Great, we give it to you. It's up front. You can say, great, here's 10 choices. I want to pick this. And so we're going to try to do more things like that, like put the choice back to you. So it's like we're doing the hard work and we're saying, hey, these are 10 great options. We think this one's best, but if you want to pick a different one, knock yourself out. Same with the rotations. Like here's 3 tiers of rotation, and here's how much damage each piece adds. Which one do you want to do? And so yeah, so we think that'll be really nice for people, a nice change of pace after. When these games age, you just go down this rabbit hole of how complex can we get it? How can we min max every little thing? And we kind of want to step back and be like, well, is that really what everybody wants, or did we just take the fun out of the game?
I myself find myself having a hard time of breaking out of that mentality.
It's hard, yeah.
Because I do want to min max everything. I don't,
Mhm.
and I just don't like the idea. It doesn't feel good to be like, well, I don't want to use this talent because I don't like it because it's the best.
Right. Right.
And it's like it irritates me that I want to use something else even though I know it's the best. Or in my mind, I feel like I'm forced to play a talent despite how not fun it is because it is the best. And I would feel like I'm not doing what I can to be the best if I didn't use that talent.
Yeah, and I think part of
yeah.
I was gonna say, I think part of the problem right now is, you're told it's the best.
True.
But you don't necessarily know how much better, right? And so is it 0.5% better? Well, if it's 0.5%, you might be like, okay, seriously, it's the same. I'm never gonna notice that in game. If it's 5% better, you're gonna say, okay, I don't really like it, but I'm definitely going to keep using it because to me, 5% is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we really want to do is just put the numbers in front of you. I did a bunch of surveys, and it was really interesting. I asked people, how much damage would you be willing to give up? And I asked it on 2 things, a rotation, and I asked on trinkets. How much damage would you be willing to give up to use something that you thought was more fun? And the range is huge. And I put in like, it's like half up from 0.25%, I think, up to 10% where the range is. And it's very different for people, right? Some people think 0.5%, oh my God, end of the world. If it's 0.5%, I have to do it. Other people are like, 10%, don't really care, and I'm not here to tell you. I'm not here to judge. For me, it's usually like within a few percent. But yeah, so it's like everyone's different. Everyone's rating different types of content with different types of teams, and we just want to give you that information so you can make an informed decision instead of us telling you 0.5%. You don't care about 0.5%. You're, oh my God, why are you rating?
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree, and I think we're gonna have. I know proportionally speaking, it's no different from when we didn't have the stat squish, but truthfully speaking, 5% when we were at 975 item level is a lot larger than 5% when we're at 245 item level, or what's it gonna be 345?
Like the raw damage,
right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it could be the difference of 1,000 DPS versus 500,000 DPS.
Right.
When you compare
Yeah.
those 2 stat differences,
I wonder if a stat squish is actually an interesting time to get people to focus a little bit more on fun, because like you said, it's like 1,000, whatever. Even though it's still 5%, it doesn't really matter to me, right? And I wonder, yeah, if you focus on the raw numbers, if that changes people's perspective and gets people out of this like hyper focused mindset. I mean, some people like that, and good, you should. What we're trying to do is, also help the people who would like a little more choice and freedom, but feel like they don't have it, and give them the data so they have the confidence to make that choice. The raid
Right.
leader says, I can't believe you're using this talent. They're like, dude, the talent's 1% worse. Who cares? Oh, yeah, okay, fine, go ahead. Be like, I'll negotiate with you. I'll stand in fire for one less second, which is going to get me the. I did some research, and I'll end up putting it in a blog article at some point. The number of things that change your damage by 1%, and it's like missing one cast of your best ability in the entire 5-minute fight is the same. It's like 1%, so it's the same as a lot of these other things we all worry and focus on. Yet we're not focused so hard on always be casting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just interesting to put that in perspective for everybody. It's like, oh, okay, well, if I take this talent that's 1% worse, but I cast once more, if I focus really hard on that, I make up the difference.
Well, it's like when
Someone's
when
gonna
you
be
look
"You
at
should do
like
both."
right, like when you look at the world first kills and you look at their item level and their DPS, especially now with Titan forging, the way all that works. These are guys that are killing it 5 to 10 item levels lower than most guilds are killing the content now.
Right.
Before we had the stat squish, and most of those players were doing right at the same DPS that people are doing now or better. And it's because those little 1% changes, be it a
Right.
miss in a cast, casting the wrong thing, taking half a second too long for your move or to quit moving and start casting again, or missing your mark where you need to move as a group. I mean, the execution for these groups is so much better.
Right.
And those little 1% add up. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
you as a group have to decide how hardcore you're going to be, how fast you want to progress. And with that will come the tolerance of fun versus max men for your group, and how micromanaging you want to be with your raiders talent trees and gear selection and all of everything else that comes along with that. And just kind of as a PSA for this segment, that's up to each and every single one of you in your group. I would like to think that each and every single one of you with your respective groups is being upfront about that with your members from the get-go so people know what to expect. Because then you can avoid a situation, the he said, she said stuff. But you also have to figure out why you pay your monthly fee, whether it be in-game currency or real-life money. And what's worth to you? How do you want to play the game? You know what I mean? Like there is no one right way. There might be a right way for your group, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right way for other groups or other individuals. I did kind of want to ask you one last question as well. There was a request from Twitch chat earlier. They want to know when you're going to have AskMrRobot pet battles.
Yeah. Awesome. We actually, funny enough, we had a League of Legends simulator way back in the day. So you could like do different builds and fight each other and figure out, what build worked best against what, different things. And it was awesome. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, it's PvP, you can't simulate it. And then we stopped playing League of Legends because we play heroes. I mean, I like it. It's easier. It's
Blizzard or bust.
Blizzard or bust. That's right. And so then, if you're not playing the game, it's really hard to keep up to date with it. So we ended up dropping it. But that could be a little pet battle-y thing. Everyone's getting their hopes up. No, I'm sorry. We probably won't. We probably won't do it. Would be kind of fun though, right?
Well, I gotta, as my chair squeaks here, I gotta say, as we approach the BFA drop date, I'm thoroughly excited to continue using the AskMrRobot tools, and the bonus roll thing I think is fantastic. I know it's kind of cheesy to like that. It's really inconsequential.
It's one of our most popular features.
Well, I mean, it's super inconsequential whether you use it or not, right? Like, how many times does a bonus roll actually yield results for people? So, right, like, whether you use it for that, that extra.
Well, I need that gold. I need that gold.
Hey, man, you do you, Marty. You're on European servers anyway, so. But I'm definitely excited to see what you haven't told us and is coming, and also use what you guys have improved upon. And even use a different tool set that you guys offer that I didn't use in Legion because, like I said, now I'm tanking. So before we get out of here, we are over the hour mark now. Was there anything else you'd like to kind of throw out there or add in before we take off for the day?
No, I think that's it. I know we talked about some premium features, so I always want to tell people that you get a free trial without a credit card because we all know every other website out there does that, and we know why they're doing it. It's not cool.
Right.
But if you go to the site and say you used to use it, you haven't used it in a while, and your free trial's over, um, just send us an email in the contact form and let us know, and I'll reset it for you. And then I think at some point in BFA, we're going to do like a mass trial reset as well, so that if you haven't used it for a while, everyone gets to use it again. But I always feel bad, like, oh, people are like, oh, I want to try these. Oh, I can't, and they feel like they have to pay. No, hit me up. I will make sure you've got your free trial if it expired, because if you try it and you don't like it, that's on us, right? I shouldn't be getting your money. But if you try it and you like it, well, you're gonna upgrade. So I think that's the fair way to do it.
I got to say, I have premium access and I absolutely love it. It's totally worth the $12 a year, or like she said, the $2 a month. It's such a minimal fee compared to how you spend your money otherwise. That's a whole different rabbit hole of a discussion we could go down, but it's worth it.
Oh God, I know. I can go down all sorts.
Right. It's worth it. I would definitely highly advise those either interested. If nothing else,
Have you simmed how much people are willing to pay? Is that how you ended on two?
That's actually no. I actually did do every time I do a survey on this. It's super interesting because I have a couple of options. Like, oh, I think the price is just right. I think you should raise it. Who chooses that? I think you should lower it, which people are like, oh, lower it because then I get a discount. I'm always surprised that we have a significant number of people who say you should raise it. I'm like, who are you people? But no, we try. I mean, we know we could, but we try really hard not to because we don't. Nobody owns our company. We don't have venture capital, so we get to like run it how we want
mm-hmm.
we would want to be treated. And you're already paying $15 a month for Blizzard. And we kind of try to set it like that. It's like, okay, well, you're paying $12 a year for us. So you're basically, for 1 month of what you're paying for Blizzard, you would pay us that for a year. And that seems fair. If we start raising it, to 25, 50, it's like, well, wait, is that really worth it? Like, I'm paying for the game. You're just kind of a little add-on. Like, it shouldn't start to be as expensive as the game. When you stop to think about it, it's a little counterintuitive. So yeah, so anyway, we always try to, it could go down a rabbit hole like we talked about. But yeah, so we like to treat people like we would like to be treated. So it's always been $12 for like 7-8 years. Yeah, and people really like it. So and it's we're making enough to do this full time. So that's good enough for all of us because it lets us keep building a website for World of Warcraft, and who wouldn't want to do that if they could? So yeah.
I would.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The last few things I gotta add. Coming to the other things I've always liked about you guys is it's not your way or the highway, which is a lot of times the feeling you can get when you use other tools offered by the community or reading guides. You are absolutely 100% in it for the community, which is fantastic. So you make changes based on what the feedback you get. You're open to suggestions. You listen to people. You don't just tell people to hit the road or go see the pens. The quote unquote see the pens. So that's great. You guys are definitely open, and you're accessible. Secondly, a lot of these other authoritative figures inside the community, whether it be guide writers, mod creators, whatever, you guys are accessible. I've always loved that aspect. There's not a single time I've gone into your Discord where I haven't seen at least one of you three actively talking to the people in your Discord. And so with that being said, I definitely wanted to take a moment, if you don't mind, maybe letting people know who might be looking to use your stuff and maybe want to reach out to you guys, how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, for most things, I think the forums are probably best. While we love Discord and we have good discussions there, it's usually best for kind of like more like a discussion, right? Not not troubleshooting or I have a question. And part of that is just because there's only 3 of us, and so keeping up, like live with Discord, we usually don't have time to do unless it's like, oh hey, okay, cool, I'm gonna take 30 minutes set aside and we're gonna have this discussion on what would be really cool if we did this with this boss script. So forums are probably best if it's like troubleshooting or a quick question. We check those all the time, and then we also have a few people who also help and check those. There's also email, like if you just don't want it to be public, or you're like, oh, I feel like I have a dumb question, I don't want people to make fun of you. We will never make fun of you, but you never know. Public, I get it. Email us, that goes directly to me. I handle all of our emails unless I'm on vacation, and then it goes to Swole. And we really just try to help you, right? We try to take the perspective of like nobody's dumb, right? I've had people who email and they're like, hey, I try to copy the stuff from the add-on and then paste it into your site, and it always shows a V. Like, oh, right, copy and paste, right? They're not, they didn't know how to do the control copy, control paste. Well, turns out the person was like 75. Like, can you imagine if I just came down on this person? You know, some people just don't know these things. Like, if I walked into a car mechanic and they laughed at me because I'm like, oh, it's making some really kind of weird noise, they'd be like, oh my God, seriously, lady? Like, why am I expected to know that? So we try to treat people the same way. Like, if I walked into a car mechanic and would I want them to make fun of me? No, I'm gonna be like, of course I don't know how this works. So we try to treat people the same way. And one time I did have somebody who emailed about the control copy control, like something was going wrong. And I tried very nicely to explain, you know, how to actually do control copy and control paste. And the person replies, says, I spit out my coffee when I read this. He's like, I'm sure you get a lot of users. I know how to control copy and control paste. Turns out it was like something interfering with the browser. But anyway, email us. We're always nice and happy, and try to help you. And it's also good to hear from you, because if you're having a problem and we hear from it from 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, we know we have to fix something. And so it's actually really good to even have those kinds of questions pop up, because that's how we learn that something on the site is not obvious, or, you know, like the filter button. The number of times people are like, hey, I want to, I'm like, we can't, it's the filters. We can't, it's the filters, we can't. I started having a template that I copy and pasted and said, we can't, it's the filters, and here's how to find it. You know, when that happens, you need to fix something on your website. It's not you, it's me. So yeah,
sure.
anyway, so that was a little sidetrack. Oh my God, I can't stay on topic. Forums, which are forums.askmrrobot.com. Twitter, if you just want to say hi. I mean, it's not very good troubleshooting. Discord, we can always give you a Discord link for your show notes if you want.
Yeah.
And then our email, the contact form, which is right on the, pointing at the camera, it's like up here on the screen. And yeah, that's everything. And most of it goes to me. So you do happy face.
Yeah, cool. So, definitely want to thank you guys for coming out. You guys like Swole and Yell are here, but I should say thank you guys for what you've been doing. Thank you, Zoop, for coming on the show today. I can't say enough, guys. If you're looking to find your sim solutions, your gear selection solutions, if you don't want to have to download a bunch of different programs, a bunch of different websites, whatever, AskMrRobot is a one-stop shop. It's fantastic. Sounds like they have some great stuff coming for BFA to further improve what they already have. I cannot advise it enough. So check it out. I know I'm going to be continuing to use it. Marty, I'm sure, is going to be checking it out. And if you want to say hi, guys, go over there and check them on out. Also, I wanted to add, I mentioned it off the show earlier. I originally had plans for a community-based class Discord that was going to be kind of a one-stop shop. So if you played alts like that, but there's a new group that have come and kind of stolen the idea right out from underneath me, and I can't praise them enough. WowPlus.org. I've mentioned them on the show before. It's going to be community-based guides. They have a bunch of stuff up already. It's fantastic. So if you guys wanting something like that, so you don't have to continue to go to all the different class Discords or the websites, WowPlus.org, check them out. It's great stuff. They have been in talks with AskMrRobot for a lot of the stuff they do, and been kind of bouncing off one another to try and build very community-friendly tool sets and websites. So again, cannot advise either one of these enough. Check them out.
Yeah, can I say something?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so they reached out to us. It was actually just a cold email, and you know, he was just mentioning.
I'm gonna let my dog out while you talk. I'm still listening.
Cool. And so when they're talking about this community thing, I don't know, for me, and I know that they're kind of working on some focus, and I think they're adapting to some things in the, you know, from community feedback. But my interpretation, and they could end up changing. What I'm really excited about is the community submitted guides, because it reminds me of Mobifier. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's basically like you go somewhere and it's like, hey, here's a bunch of guides. If you want to play this way or this way or this way, um, there's a whole bunch of different like ways you can play. You can get if you're a mythic player, if you're a heroic player, if it's somebody who has a hard time with this rotation, maybe they suggest another one. So I'm really excited to kind of show people the different options. And I know we've been talking to them to see if we can help them quantify some of these things. And so that's kind of some of the stuff. It's all up in the air. But yeah, I'm just really excited. Like you go to somewhere and you're like, hey, I want to look at Warlock, Affliction Warlock rotation, or not rotation, just guides in general, talent builds, whatever. It's like here's 6 options, and it's by different people who play differently, because I know it's really hard, and I fall into this trap too. Like if I were to write a guide, it would be based off how our team plays and the insights I get. But my team's a lot different than your team or a normal team, and it's so easy to be like normal team. You hear this all the time. Why are you even? It doesn't even matter what you do. It's so easy. No, it's not. It's not easy for those people. First, their gear's a lot lower, and second, there's all sorts of just different skill levels. And so I'm super excited to see where they go. So yeah, keep an eye on those guys. I know while their stuff is live, I think they haven't done like the official public launch. I think, right? So it's still, so if you check them out, I know it's still kind of in flux, and they're super excited. They have so much passion and excitement behind it. So I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, me too. I've actually sat down at length with him one evening. I kind of wanted to just make sure and kind of really get a feel for what his plans were with this project before I completely shut the doors on my idea. And I got to say, I was more than happy to shut the doors on my idea. They're doing a fantastic job, and he's got my seal of approval. And truth be told, it kind of takes some extra work off my plate. And two birds with one stone. I'm getting the result I wanted from all the negative experiences both myself and I've seen other people have to deal with when they go to certain discords for resources. And so he filled that void, and it's allowed me some time to work on some other projects. I know Marty and myself are about to release one that we're doing with a bunch of other guys. So a big thank you for a lot of reasons to the WoW Plus guys, and hopefully what their work is becoming becomes much more long term and successful. So, but yeah, I don't really have much else today. Do you, Marty or Zoop?
No, but it's already a long show, so if I start asking questions, we'll just keep talking, I guess. So no, I'm good. Let's end it. So yeah, I'm on the EU side. I need to go to bed soon.
Before we get on another tangent and I talk.
Well, she's on Michael time. She's on the West Coast, so we're just gonna drag this out, Marty. You're outnumbered here.
49 for me.
Oh, God damn it.
Do you see all the daylight coming in here?
Yeah.
I've got all day.
I'll just mute my microphone and go to bed. So
Marty
just keep talking.
Marty just leaves.
That's fine. When you wake up, we'll still be here. So.
Yeah,
exactly.
Waiting. But no, that's going to do it for us today, guys. I want to thank the AskMrRobot crew again. And also want to direct you guys, if you want, go check out wowplus.org. They have some great stuff coming out. And I cannot wait for BFA. I'm going to hit these 2 buttons, guys, and we're going to get out of here. And we will talk to you next week with the Raider.io crew. They have some fantastic stuff coming our way. So tune in next week, 2:30 Central Standard Time. We'll see you then. See you guys. If you guys want to find Marty, you can find him over at the Blizzard podcast he does, where they talk all things Blizzard games, The Blue Recluse. If you want to find him on Twitter, you can find him at Unamathil. For me, guys, if you want to find me, and personally, you can find me over on my Twitch and Twitter, which are both at Mega Irish Gaming, or you can find me on my All Things Blizzard podcast, which I do with my good friend Dusty Porter, the Blizzard Umbrella. If you want to find us here on the show, you can find us at our Twitter account, which is at _TRC podcast, or you can find us on our email, theraidersconfessional@gmail.com, no apostrophe on the S. That being said, guys, Dusty, take us out of here, my man. See ya.
Sorry, I died. Was I supposed to stand in the green puddles or the orange ones?
Hey, get together over there, bud.
This show has been hosted by Dragon Powered Studios, and the intro and outro has been brought to you by Thankful Cow Solutions.
Moo.